Preparing to live stream, setting up your meeting for YouTube Live. There we are. Preparing to live stream, setting up your meeting for YouTube Live. Oh, is that my speaker?
I think it did. It just came
Okay,
back.
well, we're fine. Let's just pray. Okay, so. Preparing to live stream, setting up your meeting. Oh, I can mute. I got my speaker.
Wow, that's a huge delay.
Oh, I can mute. I can mute my. Okay, I got it.
Okay.
All right. So I think there's a 20-second delay in the live stream. So if someone joins and asks a question, it'll be 20 minutes before I see it. So let me just type hello to the chat just to make sure. Yeah. Um. Okay. Welcome, Rena. Hi everyone. My name is Dr. Bach. I'm with my friend Rena K. We are both certified organic intelligence coaches, and we're trying out this live stream to have a free association conversation with each other about organic intelligence. We are not sponsored by Organic Intelligence, the organization. We are separate certified organic intelligence coaches who have a good amount of knowledge and knowledge of organic intelligence, the theory and practice, and experience with it as clients and as practitioners. And we're interested in connecting with each other around organic intelligence and educating the public on its ideas. So that's our main purpose. And we're very excited to inaugurate this hopefully repetitive series of live streams on organic intelligence.
Yeah, sure.
So,
welcome to, and it's we look forward to when there are people here that can ask questions, and this is kind of how we decided we want to do it as a live stream way of communicating, so that if people hear us and have questions, we can answer them in the immediate moment. And so that, one of organic intelligence ideas is attuning to what's happening in the moment, right? Not coming in with a preset idea of what to do, what to say, but more allowing the moment. And Bach's already mentioned the free association conversation. That's, normal conversation and seeing what flows out of that. And so the live stream gives us an opportunity to do that and come not as like a script or fully prepared, but just to see what kinds of things what kinds of questions or thoughts or ideas that people have as we explore this conversation together.
Yes, nice. Nicely put. And I'll have my eye on the chat and I'll let you know if anyone chimes in. In our last conversation, one of the topics we brought up was a possible thought about organic intelligence, which may be intended as an objection by some people, which is organic intelligence just about being positive, focusing on the bright side, the silver lining, ignoring your problems, ignoring what's negative, trying to ignore your suffering, and focusing on pleasure and comfort and ease and what's going well and what's positive. And that could be intended as just a neutral attempt, an attempt to accurately identify organic intelligence. And also it could be intended as an objection, like there's something wrong with that. If you're just focusing on being positive, that seems really deficient in an approach, in a genuine approach to healing, deep healing and growth. Yeah.
Yeah, there's no doubt we're used to the dualism of positive, negative, right? Like that's a valence, like a way of experiencing on a feeling level, how we interact with life, right? And all the things that come with life, whether it be simple things like the weather, or what happens when our car breaks down, to what happens when a friend or a partner gets sick and has an illness, people die, like all the whole gamut of life. There's a tendency to want to categorize things in terms of positive and negative. And those things that are positive, that we deem positive, we are oftentimes attempting to get more of, right? We either are trying to approach it or we may be trying to grasp to get it, right? Working really hard to get it. And then those things which we deem negative are those things which we are trying to avoid at all costs. And so sounds like a good conversation to have about
Mm.
one, what does positive, negative mean in terms of well-being? And then two, how how organic intelligence kind of parses that out a little bit. Because positive and negative is in reference to what, right?
Uh, mm.
Good.
Thank you. I I have an impulse. I have an idea in the moment. I wanted to tell it to you and see what you think. How about we get very concrete and I pretend to be a client or imagine a client and the client comes into you and says something and gives you an opener. And I would then ask how you would deal with that. I think that would get straight into our how organic intelligence approaches.
Sure.
Are you open to that?
Sure. Let's see what happens.
Yeah, see what happens. See what happens. Um, so I come into you, you're my organic intelligence practitioner. I come in and begin with I'm angry and I begin talking about a friend I'm in conflict with and I complain he's very pushy and manipulative and he gives a lot of unsolicited advice and I hate it and I hate him for it. Always trying to control me, always judging me, shaming me, telling me what I'm doing wrong, telling me what to do. Okay. But he does care about me and he's very smart. And we also share some values. He also is an intellectual and likes philosophy. So we can discuss philosophy sometimes. But at the same time, there are all these negatives. And I'm just really frustrated with this friend. So that's how I open with you.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
And according to just a common sense understanding of negative and positive, I gave you a bunch of negatives, my frustration with my friend and these qualities of his that frustrate me. And I threw out some positives all organically. I'm not trying to manufacture anything by artificial force, but just, yeah, he's smart and he's sometimes kind and he has a sense of humor.
Mm-hmm.
And so I lay all that out in the first 3 to 5 minutes with you.
Right.
And I say, heal me, Rena.
Yeah. So, and not, I don't want to belabor all the different points, right? But of course, as a practitioner, our first job is to attune to where the person's at and attune to what they're bringing in. So oftentimes it would really depend on how they brought that in, actually, right? So leaving aside for a moment, just the positive and negative idea, but like which was talked about first? Right? Where did they talk about, oh, I've got this friend and he's super smart and I really enjoy connecting with him. Long before we would ever get to the other pieces that the person's concerned with, we'd end up having a conversation about that, right? Because I'd be attuning to that in the moment. Now, if it was reversed, if the person came in as like, oh, I'm so frustrated with this friend and started listing all the reasons why they're frustrated, I'm going to start being connected and attuned to that, right? And we're going to start there. So it depends on the person, how, in what state they're actually coming in with. Because in that moment, we're looking deeper. What is the biology attempting to do in that moment? Now, as a practitioner, I'm making just a hypothesis, and I'm gonna operate from those hypotheses, and some of them might be right in line, and some of them might be off a little bit, and I'm adjusting accordingly. But what I'd be looking for is how can I say yes to whatever the client's saying and see what their biology is trying to do and say yes to that. Right?
That's interesting.
So their biology, if they are a person who is slightly on the Pollyannish side of things, or has a history of, say, fawning in conflictual relationships, has a history of just appeasing and giving it, right? Like the biology may be trying to hit a level of sufficient annoyance, irritation, anger to be able to use that for motivation of action. And so it's not about are all these things negative? It's more about how is that seeing those negative or quote unquote negative things, how is that helping the biology be able to organize itself? And by organize itself, we've talked about the organic intensity thresholds. That's a unique term to organic intelligence. And so we would be trying to help the system do that. And so it might be along the lines of what's, say, sympathetic, right? And unpleasant, like sympathetic, unpleasant, that's going to be fight or flight, right? And so if the person has traditionally always done the sympathetic in the flight space, we may want to encourage and attune to the way that they are doing the sympathetic in a fight way, because that may be what their biology is needing to be able to hit that threshold, that next organic threshold. Likewise, it could be the reverse. Somebody comes in and they are always angry. Like they've just got a lot of that anger energy, and they find problems with, each person in their life, and they're very, keen on that, and they may be right on and accurate about that. And there may be something else their biology is trying to do that, if the system is, say, stuck in the fight response, and I'm showing a lot of different things that we're looking for, then that would change how I would attune to them. And that's where, again, you would join them and go, yep, that's rough. When people do that, that's rough. And isn't it interesting that we're here together talking about that, right? And we just don't know what's going to happen with how this is going to play out with this friend, do we? And then we'd be able to explore that in terms of where that's going to go and what their thoughts are about working with that friend. And so that's where I'm just going to slowly nuance it so that I can both join to them, but also hint at maybe what their biology is trying to do, even if they can't yet see it.
As I took all of that in, and thank you, I was realizing and appreciating how complex organic intelligence is, even if it can be described very simply as we're trying to focus on moments of ease and comfort because that's the key to increasing capacity. The implementation of that is very complex. So, and you've raised a lot of aspects of organic intelligence. One thing you said in the beginning was before sorting out what's negative or positive, or even thinking about it too much, negative versus positive, we're looking at what is there in the moment. What is the client bringing to us in the moment? Positive or negative, hold that aside. But what is the client bringing in the moment, and joining that? If the client comes in saying, I'm just trying to reflect on some of what you said to kind of stay with it, and I'm very, very appreciative. If the client comes in talking about what he likes about his friend and the positive qualities about his friend, and that's what the client wants to talk about, which most people would say are positive things, we join that. Why do we join that? Not per se because it's positive, or maybe not primarily because it's positive, even if it is, but that's what's here. Yeah. And in another case, if the client comes in angry and wanting to explicate on what's bad about his friend and how much suffering his friend causes him, we join that. Not because it's negative, not because we're trying to focus on what's wrong at all, because that's not OI, but because that's what's there. So that's one thing you said in the very beginning, right? We're trying to join what's there first and foremost. And then within that context, we can attend to what's positive or negative, and what to do with what's positive, what to do with what's negative. That's one thing you said, right? Yeah. And another, and if you feel like you want to interrupt, please do so.
Yeah, let me do right that,
yeah,
because otherwise I'll write it down. But I was thinking that idea of what's there, I think you're naming it kind of in terms of the content, right? And whether the content's positive, whether the context's negative. And just want to say, like, I try to think of what is there, what is here, is a human who has a biology, and that biology is trying to do things to help it become more organized and have a life of greater ease and just really survival, right? Survival and well-being. So what's there is the person, regardless of what it is they're bringing in, right? So a person's bringing in content, but what's really there is a higher level or a fractal level of, oh, this is content of just being human. And what is the human being attempting to do? And that, so I'm holding both, right? So there's holding the both of that bigger piece. And what the human being's trying to do, I would say, is always going to be what's positive, right? Because it's trying to organize towards well-being and survival. And that I would label or name as positive. And I would say what is not attempting, what is not helping the system evolve, organize, and is towards de-evolution, so not surviving, that I would deem negative. And so how does content about a friend, how is that, like, we can look at the information as positive or negative in the content, but if we put it in the bigger context of the person, what the biology is trying to do, we might label these things very differently when we're thinking about, well-being and survival organization versus, not surviving, not well-being and disorganization.
Which is why we focus on the biology. And in our last conversation, we talked about why organic intelligence focuses on the term and the concept biology here. We're addressing the biology. So you were clarifying for me, for us, what's there is the whole biology. The content that a person is saying, my friend is annoying, my friend is smart, I like my friend, I don't like my friend. The content is a window into what is happening, which is the biology as a whole. And I think you were suggesting that what's positive is what promotes life, and what is negative is what does not. Yeah, and maybe in the fundamental sense of the final analysis, that's what's positive and negative. And particular content that a client is saying, my friend pisses me off, I like my friend. Content that would popularly be regarded as negative, you're talking about what's bad about your friend and you're angry. From an organic intelligence perspective and the widest perspective, which is what we try to adopt, it could be positive because it is serving the biology's movement towards increasing capacity. And the example you gave was of a client who does not have enough access to, there were some technical terms there, sympathetic arousal, fight, anger. That anger is not that technical, but there's a client who may not have enough, who may have diminished access to energy, including anger and the ability to set boundaries and assert and get what you want and protect yourself. And if a client is trash talking a friend and being angry, that could be a positive sign of increased capacity for that life preserving energy. Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm trying to reflect some of what you said.
I love the naming of the life preserving energy or life destroying energy, and that being our fundamental way of viewing that. And even, you're right, I was using some language that may or may not be stay with us into eternity, but at least this idea of increased energy capacity or less energy capacity, that's the most simple way of talking about that. So whether we call it sympathetic or activation, it's energy and the availability of the energy being able to be utilized in whether it's in a life preserving way or a life destroying way.
Yeah. And I'm not trying to discourage you from using technical terms or terms that people may be unfamiliar with. I'm constantly thinking about when to use those terms, when not to, and why am I using them, and do I really understand what they mean exactly? Or so it's just a thing that I'm holding all the time, you know.
Yeah.
So yeah, so you gave a nice example of how content that's negative could be very negative in a very narrow popular sense, could be very positive because it's organizing to the biology. Yeah.
Mhm.
What about an example, if you're willing to go with me here, about when a client is being positive in some popularly labeled sense, but that is not helpful?
Mhm.
Yeah, is that?
Yeah, I mean, there's oodles of examples. Like, um, you know, I'm gonna go for a walk at midnight, and because it makes me feel good to go for a walk, I'm not sleeping. At least I could do something, and the sense is, whatever's gonna happen is fine. I'm okay. Whatever the belief systems are, whether I have God or guardian angels or just an idea of all things work out for good, or that kind of idea, that mentality. They could be walking around with that idea of, hey, all is well, all is good. I don't have to consider danger. So being
Oh,
positive would be a way of denying the possibility of some potential threat. And it may be in your particular neighborhood, walking around at midnight by yourself, especially if you're female, not a problem, which just would never be an issue. And then other neighborhoods might be maybe, maybe not. And then other neighborhoods, not a good idea. So
yeah.
being positive and thinking, oh, I can do this because I've got this positive mentality, and that positive mentality will protect me. That may not be accurate to what's needed in the moment, right? And so, and I'm just making this up as I go as an example. If a person is, struggling with sleep, and that's a consistent thing, and they're doing this on a regular basis, that positive mentality about that may not be helping them. There may be other things that we need to consider, both from how could you be in line with the circadian rhythms of your location, and how much is the idea that you have a form of avoidance of something that would be really helpful for you. um, that's one example that came to mind. I don't know if it's the best example because I can think of others, but
Oh, I mean, no, I'll take it. I mean, it's a very stark, clear, relatable example. It could be dangerous walking out at night. And if you're just thinking, well, everything works out for the best. I'm invincible, positive. Think for the don't focus on the negative. Don't focus on the fear. That could be really bad. So that was a very stark, clear example. Off the top of my head, I could imagine a client. She she's really up talking her husband about all his good qualities, but you can kind of tell that there's an internal intensity. There's a bit of trembling, and there's something really wrong with, let's say, the relationship, and she's trying to like knock it back and not talk about it, but by just focusing on the good qualities of her husband. And then it may near this point where she breaks down. So in that case, we may want to ping or invite. Okay, if there's something else that's not so positive about your husband, you want to talk about it, feel free. That could be an example of she's really grasping onto what's popularly called positive, but in this case, it's negative because she's trying to clamp down on intensity that will not be clamped down on, and that's really disorganizing, right? That's just one off the top of my head. Yeah.
yeah, I like the phrase of, you know, the question always is, in terms of, again, positive, negative, is it life supporting and life not, or life not supporting? There's also the idea of whether or not this is allowing for the system to reach its natural levels of intensity, or is it trying to avoid feeling of intensity? So whether it's positive or negative also has to do with the idea of how is it relating to an individual's particular levels of intensity.
What's positive you suggested is what promotes life, and what's negative is what harms life. And from an organic intelligence, fundamental to what promotes life is optimal cycles of intensity and de-intensification. So what's positive, the final analysis, what's positive is what's pro-life, and then a little bit more detailed within organic intelligence, what's positive is what consists in cycles of arousal and de-arousal, intensity and de-intensification that are healthy, optimal, and the sign of that is that their peak reaches intensity thresholds, organic intensity thresholds that increase capacity over time. Yeah. This is a very complex topic because I'm getting the sense that positive and negative are understood implicitly in many different ways, and one could put the brain power into cataloging, which and I don't have that. I'm not gonna do that right now, but um, organic intelligence. I was gonna raise something unless you wanted to say something right now.
Yeah, go ahead. I have another example I was thinking of. Yeah, let's do this. I want to give one
Yeah,
more
I like
example.
examples. So
Yeah. An example, let's say a person has had some kind of let's say something happened in their life and they broke their collarbone. Just give that example, right? Broke their collarbone, and so now they're in a sling to protect it. And if they go outside and interact with their neighbors, everybody's going to see that, ask them questions, want to know what's going on, and they have to tell the story of what happened over and over and over again, right? And the possibility is, and I've had this kind of thing, it's not that exact example, but I've had this kind of thing where a person is like, I had this accident and all I wanted to do for a week is just sit at home. I didn't want to see anybody. I didn't want to talk to anybody. Matter of fact, I was feeling so much shame about having how I got in the accident, so I didn't want to tell a story about it. And all I could feel is all that shame. And I just laid on the couch. And I should be able to get up. I should be able to go out. I should be able to not be ashamed of what happened, right? And so they see their behavior as being negative, like I should be able to do something different. And that laying on the couch was not the right thing to do. They should be out there because it's like it's a collarbone. They can go out and still do things and accomplish things in life, right? So they should be okay. And yet the wisdom of the body and the biology might just be, oh, actually going out and interacting with people and talking about what happened causes me to relive this story over and over at high intensity levels. And that's just not going to be good for me. So my biology is going to lead me to just having low energy. And if you've been in an accident of some kind and gone through having to have the bone reset and all that's involved in that, there's going to be some recovery time necessary, right? That was a high activation experience, and now we need to deactivate. And the activation might have happened really quickly. You're riding your bike, you do an endo, and you have a broken collarbone. And yet the deactivation might take a long time. It might take a week or two, right? For the system to come down so that it feels like, oh, now I have enough energy to go out. And if people ask me about it and see it, I can tell them, and it's not too intense. So again, this idea of people will oftentimes judge their own actions, behaviors as being quote unquote negative, when in reality, when it comes to their system's intensity levels, it's like right on. It's right in the pocket of what is in aligned with their own system's organization. And so this way that we can deem our behaviors as positive and negative based on conditioning or what society has said should happen, that kind of thing. Very often, our own organization system knows something different. Our own biology knows the level of intensity we have available to us or not, and might
yeah,
actually do the more positive in terms of life affirming action, even if it's seen as negative by the self or by others.
I love your example and what you just said, and the example of wanting to stay at home, be on the couch, avoid people instead of go socialize. because you don't want to explain the injury over and over again and it triggers shame. That example exemplifies an important idea in organic intelligence, which is that often what a lot of mainstream therapy and coaching pathologize as bad or claim is bad, non-optimal, non-ideal, maladaptive behavior is actually good. And one category of example that comes to mind is quote unquote avoidant behavior, avoiding what triggers you, avoiding what's wrong, avoiding suffering. Many therapeutic approaches and coaching approaches explicitly or implicitly communicate that that's not good.
Yeah,
Avoiding
I would.
pain.
Yeah, I would actually say you don't even need a therapist or other coaching profession to do that. We'll do that to ourselves automatically, right? Like
Wow.
we have a way of pathologizing our own behavior without any help from society or segments of society. And yes, it's also true that sometimes in therapeutic encounters there is a way of not being able to see what is adaptive, right? So something like, say, avoidance, we'll stay with that one. Avoidant behavior, the idea was like, oh, we want to get you out there meeting people so you can get a job, these kinds of things.
Hmm.
And while it's true that it's probably more life preserving to be able to work and to be able to have friendships and partnerships, like that's most likely going to be more life preserving in the long run. Going back to what you said in the beginning, meeting a person where they are at to start, what's most adaptive about what they're doing? What is preserving about what they are doing? And being able to find that and allow that to organize in the system, one's biology to hit its own threshold of intensity on that. And that level of intensity may be really, really tiny,
Yeah.
right? We're going to find that little bit of where they can come up and come down with ease, and that will increase the system until they're able to, to the point they're able to do these other things that we would consider to be adaptive. So I think it's important to not dismiss things which we know long term is not beneficial. Right?
Mm.
Another classic would be like drug use, say, right? And in drug use, people choose their drugs of choice based on what it's doing to their biology, how it's helping shore up their biology. And is it most likely better for them if they don't do that long term? Yes. And in the moment, what is it about that is serving them, is positive, is helping them? And being able to find that so we can go, yes to something that the person is doing, even if it has negative consequences, and being able to work with that, little by little, to be able to
Mm.
help the system, to help a person's biology organize such that there are not negative consequences to their behavior.
Thank you. As we come upon our time, I wanted to offer the question in my mind is what is can I offer an essentialized something, some content, some answer as to what is organic intelligence's overall perspective on positivity versus negativity, or how would organic intelligence respond to the criticism that you guys are just about focusing on what's positive and not about what's negative? And I'm going to attempt something, and I'm curious what you might have to say. So here's what I'm thinking right now. Yes, organic intelligence does criticize a lot of mainstream approaches for focusing on what's wrong. What are your diagnoses? What are your problems? What's wrong with your life? Let's talk about that. Because if you don't talk about that and address it directly, you'll never get better. So we need to focus on what's wrong because it's real. Problems are real. What's wrong is real. Don't avoid it. Talk about it. Organic intelligence does criticize that on the grounds that it often triggers way too much intensity. too much intensity that keeps the biology disorganized. It keeps the biology's capacity diminished. The key to allowing the biology to heal and grow and increase capacity is to reduce at first too much intensity, and focusing on what's triggering and wrong and painful sensations can be too intense. And okay, so often organic intelligence will support pleasant things: eat ice cream, go for a walk, have a laugh, watch TV, play some video games, play Sudoku, etc. And then the objection to organic intelligence will be, are you just saying ignore your problems, just play some Sudoku, eat some ice cream, everything will be better? No, we're not saying that. We're saying those positive things are often helpful, very helpful, because they bring down intensity, which is what you need for capacity growth. And at the same time, focusing on the positive, especially if it takes effort, can also be too intense. Because if you find it hard to be positive and to try to be happy, and you're trying to effort at being happy or positive, that's too intense. So negativity can be too intense. Positivity can be too intense. We're looking for the optimal level of intensity. And within that, in general, what's positive when it's possible and truly enjoyable will tend to be better for you than focusing on what's negative. But the broader perspective is we want the optimal level of intensity, not just to dive into what's negative or dive into what's positive, or have some preset half negative, half positive, or be negative on Monday, Wednesday, Friday, and positive on Tuesday, or the first half of the session will be negative, second half, we don't do, it's what is here in the moment from the biology. How does the biology want to grow? What signs is it presenting that it's possible for it to bring its intensity into alignment with organic intensity thresholds? Hopefully that most of that made sense. Yeah, that's
Yep.
Anyway.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's probably a good place just to let that summary be there. I think we can talk further about that, because this is a really key element, and it gets into these fundamental ideas of, well, what is, quote unquote, the organic intensity threshold? What is that? And that is, again, that's an organic intelligence term. It has specific meanings, and it's a part of the training, which might be a good time just to say there is training in becoming a certified coach if people want more information on organic intelligence, including all the levels of participation and learning. That would be organicintelligence.org. That'll probably be down in the show notes. But yeah, this idea around positive, negative, what is serving. I think we've kind of given a very basic understanding of the critical pieces in this little talk, and it'd be interesting if people have comments and questions about it. That will fuel more conversations.
Great. Well, this conversation was very positive for me, Rena. It was very pleasurable for me. And I think it was within intensity also.
Yeah.
So
right.
It was helpful, pro-life. So thank you.
Cool.
I look forward to more conversations on this. I think every time we talk, it just raises a lot of issues that can be pursued further in depth.
Yeah.
But I hope our audience, our viewers get something positive, get some value from our discussion of organic intelligence vis-a-vis positivity and negativity.
Yeah, that sounds great.
Thank you, Rena.